Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. This is your August 28th, 2015 edition, calling it the, this would almost be the traditional close to the end of summer, because most people figure when Labor Day comes, although that gives us another week, Labor Day comes, that's the semi-official end of summer. Tonight's special guest is Hobbie. He's he does a lot of stuff. Artist, publisher, author. We're going to get to everything that he does, and I'd like to welcome you to the show, Al. And how are you tonight?
Thank you, William. I'm great. I'm great to be here. I've listened to this program for a while, and you've had some great people on, and I'm just glad to be one of them.
Oh, well, I think it's about time we got you here, so I'm glad we did. Now, exactly where are you coming to us from tonight?
Montgomery, Alabama, and I hear some booing already.
Well, no, come on, people have to live someplace.
Yeah,
but go ahead.
But not Alabama. Not the toilet that is Alabama.
Yeah, but aren't you there for a very good reason?
Well, yes, I was born here, and my mother, her health starts to fail, and so I decided to come back down here. So, I guess, this is where I'm going to be for a while.
Yeah, and the cool thing about, the kind of work that you and I and other people do as creatives is that we have the ability to do the work practically anywhere. You look at the resources of, electronic mail. Obviously, nobody charges for long distance anymore. So, being able to communicate, being able to conduct business is pretty easy no matter where you are. And although you and I have talked about the fact that, I probably would never live in Alabama, but
exactly.
but the thing is, you just make the best of what you got. Somebody's got to take care of your mother. You take care of her. That's pretty cool, and you get to still do the things that you're doing. Let me ask you this: you said you grew up there. Are you pretty much where you grew up?
No, the housing project that I grew up in, they tore it down. And one of them anyway. The first housing project was Tulane Court. They tried to tear that one down. They didn't get, they didn't complete, total destruction, but they tore down the one that I moved from that housing project to the other one, Riverside Heights. So they eventually tore that one down. But, the city hasn't really changed much, though.
But like when you were going to school, where you were growing up and stuff, was it predominantly black?
Yes. Well, and it was kind of mixed. It was mixed.
Well, that's not bad. Like here in Chicago, I grew up in the one thing above projects. I grew up in townhouses.
Wow.
It's just a little bit fancier. But okay, so you grew up there. What kind of environment was it for you? And you know what? Did you self-identify as doing creative things early?
Yes. I think I was always that weird child who was either drawing or, watching Star Trek or throwing out, hey, Mom, what is this about? Or the Apollo missions and stuff like that. And they're like, well, what are you worried about stuff like that for? That's not you. You need to worry about getting a job, worrying about, putting food on the table and all this other stuff. And, I was one of those kids where, go ahead.
Is this like preteen? That early you were interested in the space program or mostly teen? It
was early. That was one of the biggest arguments I remember. The Apollo 13 mission, my uncle was sitting there, yelling about how, because I guess the Green Bay Packers were supposed to be on television. And he was, they wasted money doing it. And he was talking about the Apollo 13 thing, and he knew nothing about it, I'm like, wow, this guy, he's just going off about how the government's doing this and how they're wasting money doing that, and he knows nothing about space.
Yeah, and in case anybody doesn't remember, Apollo 13 was the one where the oxygen tank blew up in the command module, and they made famous by the movie with Tom Hanks, but it was pretty harrowing because they really didn't know if those three guys were going to make it around the moon and make it all the way back to Earth.
And like Watergate, they just blacked out everything. I mean, in the middle of the day, if you were watching soap operas, you wasn't watching soap operas anymore.
Right. And we didn't have, oh man, think about that. Think about how many channels we had back then. Here in Chicago, we had like 4 or 5 VHF, and then we had a public TV channel. So we had 2, 5, 7, 9. 9 is WGN, the first superstation, and then Channel 11 was public TV, and then every now and then, a new UHF channel would pop up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember that.
You didn't have the same choices that we have today. I mean, today, well, let's just say we have an abundance of crap on TV that can amuse us. Okay, so during Apollo 13, you're like into the space program, and was the interest mostly your interest in it, or did anything manifest like did you draw rockets and stuff?
Yes. I mean, that was the thing in those days, rockets. I mean, it was the most exciting thing in those days, rockets and lasers. That was pretty much it. You could draw a rocket, man. Everybody loved it, And like I say, it was when the whole thing was explained, because I didn't know about the Apollo 13 thing until this priest explained it to me. He says, no, they're in trouble and they're this and that. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's what my uncle's ranting about, because all Walter Cronkite showed you was, these people, and we're gonna, our prayers go out with them and blah blah blah,
Yeah. And did you? I was lucky enough to build some, models of rockets, like I did. I did the Apollo. I did a Mercury capsule, some stuff like that.
I had that one.
Did you really?
Yes, I did.
That's pretty cool. And so now, I mean, mostly you mentioned prior to the show starting that you got a few books that you have kind of waiting to be done. For people who want to know, let me put up your link here. It's www. Is it Hobby?
ahobby.com.
Oh, HOBB?
Yeah.
Okay, HOBB. To check out your work. Okay, cool. And then, I mean, I consider you an artist. I also consider you an author because someone has to write those. You just mentioned earlier in Black Science Fiction Society.com's chat room that you're working on storyboards right now. Did any of this start out kind of early, or was your creativity kind of channeled elsewhere earlier?
Well, earlier in life, I was an artist. I mean, I think I was an artist all the way up until my first daughter was born. I mean, I sit at a table and draw. And like I say, in those days, if you could draw a rocket, and a half moon and stuff like that, everybody thought you were the greatest thing in the world. So, all through high school and junior high school, I just drew and made posters for pep rallies and stuff like that. But I think, like I say, when my first daughter was born, it was pretty much over. I mean, you couldn't find the time to draw, and you really didn't want to sit in the room by yourself, and you really couldn't sit in the room by yourself anymore. You had to provide for your family, and then I joined the military. So, the military, believe me, they don't like artists.
Well, no, because they consider that a waste of time. They're busy indoctrinating you and making you a very good soldier.
Yeah.
And anything that doesn't fall into that nomenclature, anything that doesn't that's not focused on, they definitely don't think well of.
Yeah.
What branch of the service were you in?
The Army.
Okay. Were you a specialist of any kind, or infantryman, or what were you?
I was an instructor, water purification and nuclear biological. So when Iraq kicked in, they were like, oh, he's got some MEDs over there. Let's send you guys over there. I didn't have nothing.
And how long were you in the service?
28 years.
Damn, man, that's a long time.
Yeah, I had a short break in the service. I think in the 90s, I was like, I'm going to get out and go to Hollywood and start my writing career. I'm thinking I'm just that good. And when my time for re-enlistment came up, I said, I'm just going to get out. Got out, realized that Hollywood, wow, those people down there are serious about media. So I figured I'd go back into the military because, I'm good. I'm a good writer, but I'm not at those people level.
Well, and maybe you just weren't ready yet, because you obviously have a certain amount of success doing what you're doing now. So it probably wasn't a good fit at the time. Now, okay, so let's flash forward to when you left the service, because obviously while you're in the service, you can't really ply your trade or work on your creativity. Are you moving furniture in your house?
No.
All right, just checking. And so
I hear it too.
So, yeah. So when you got out of the service, what was kind of like your career path at that time?
Walmart. That was pretty much it. I mean, I wanted to write, I wanted to create, I wanted to do my art, and you have to put food on the table. I had 5 kids, and a wife. So, that keeps you, focused on work and less focused on frivolous things like, art and writing and your dreams.
Well, let's not call your dreams frivolous, dude. I mean, come on.
Well, you said earlier about you made me remember something. When I was growing up, my parents thought that art and comics and stuff like this, and pretty much everybody in the housing project, if that boy draws, like, what are you gonna do with that? I mean, it's like black people can't draw, and everybody I met, they were like down on, man, you need to get you a job or a skill, or they always was down on the writing and the creativity part. So much so that after a while, you begin to believe it. And it's the same thing, when you get out in the real world, you got 5 kids, you can't be dreaming about distant worlds and characters and how this plot will run into this plot, because as soon as you do that, you begin to you feel the pain of reality.
Right.
Because if you're a creative, you love, the beauty of being able to stretch your imagination and go into these different worlds, and it feels good. But then when you got like a ex-wife or a bill coming in there saying, yeah, you got to pay me, I mean, it's a crash, So I got to the point where I was like, okay, you know what? I'll write at midnight when I know that everybody's asleep and all the naysayers are, sleep, and that way I can be creative. So.
And it does take time to, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I work a lot better when my immediate environment is conducive to getting work. The phone's not ringing, people aren't, hollering at me, or babies aren't crying, things like that. So, I mean, it does take a very concerted effort to be a creative, especially when you're starting out. How old were you when you really started putting together, that this is what you wanted to be, and then started honing your skills to tell your stories?
It was around about 1984 is when I started to actually say, okay, I'm going to do this as a cartoon. Because, in high school and junior high school, you're drawing comics. But it's not, you don't ever think that you're going to do this because you got Marvel and DC, and you see these great comic books. You're like, nah, I could never do that. But around about 1984, I was like, you know what? I've got some great material here. I'll just start, give it a title and start, fashioning it.
And when you first started out, were you doing both the story and the art?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I had to, because, like I say, I normally do the art, and then, you know, I know the story in my head. So I just went ahead and did both. But like I said, after my daughter was born, being stooped over a table for an hour doing panels, I mean, I just couldn't fathom it. I mean, it's just something you like.
No, I mean, yeah. No, what I was getting at was, you know, as far as what, you know, having to produce, did you find yourself being a fairly good artist, or you know, how were you building your skills? You know, what was it looking like to you, and how was it? I mean, was it encouraging you, or did you really have to kind of push yourself a little bit? How did it all work out like that?
I had to push myself. I mean, I used to watch the old Hanna-Barberas and draw Fred Flintstone while we were watching it. I mean, all the kids in the neighborhood, when they're watching comics, you know, the people who really love the cartoons would actually grab a pencil and paper after it was over, and then they'd start drawing, you know. And lines back then was pretty simple. You had, you know, Fred and Barney, Speed Racer. You didn't have the, you know, really complicated art.
Right. And so nowadays, I mean, do you construct the whole thing, or no, you mentioned, well, other people may not know this, but what's the division of labor for your comics now?
The way it starts out is, since I'm a writer, you know, and I used to be an artist, I don't do the art anymore. It starts out with the script first. I write up the script, and then if I don't have an artist already, which I got like 4 now, but when I didn't have an artist, I'd go, you know, on DeviantArt or, you know, some website like that, and I'll look for these freelance artists. There are tons of freelance artists out there, but you have to look through all of them to find the right style, you know. And when you find the right style for your writing, you know, then you email a guy, and DeviantArt sets all that up for you. You say, hey, what is your commission rate? And the guy, and normally the artist would say, well, what do you want to do? Because they don't want to get, you know, something, and then now they got to do the Sistine Chapel for, you know, $50. You know.
Well, I mean, yeah, nobody wants to feel taken advantage of.
Exactly. So, you know, you say, well, here's my script. Look at it and tell me, you know, what you think, and can you do this? And more times than not, he'll say yes or no. I'll do it for this amount. And then I'll send him a contract, and I say, you know, here's a contract. Well, actually, I'll PDF him a contract. He'll sign it, print it out, and send it back to me. And then I'll PayPal him the money, and then we'll get busy from there.
Very cool. Now, when you first started out, what kind of stories were you telling?
Basically, I tell the same type stories, either the human drama Star Trek stories, or the Al Hobbie growing up in a housing project, you know, stories, all the mistakes I made, and pretty much stuff like that. You know, I don't pretty much deviate from that. I have 6 titles. The 6 titles is first one being Hobbie County, which is myself as an adult working at Walmart. The second title is Little Al, which is myself as a child growing up in a housing project. And that's kind of like the Dennis the Menace, kind of Calvin and Hobbes type thing. And the other title is Tori, which is basically, you know, Star Wars, you know, type, you know, drama. And then we have Hobbie Adventures, and which is basically DuckTales. You know, it's, these black kids, they're having adventures. They're going inside these caves, and these caves lead to different worlds and universes, and they meet these dragons and blah blah blah. It's kind of like DuckTales. And
that's pretty cool.
A Hidden Agenda is the other one. It's basically a young man, you know, who's trying to find himself in his world, and his dad wants him to be in the military. He wants to do something else, and then the world apocalypse hits while this is going on, and the son has to go out and prove himself, you know. And the final title is GIB. It's basically some cartoons that I draw myself, you know, my crappy art, and it's stuff that I don't want, you know, that kids normally can't read. It's a little bit more risque, you know. It'll say a joke about a adultery or something like that. All my stuff is family friendly, but I put all my stuff in GIB. So.
Okay. And I mean, those are really, I mean, that's a very wide span of subject matter, you know?
Yeah. I mean, William, you know why I did that, right? Because when I first started out, most of the guys I hung out with, they were independents also. And they were like, oh, I just did this one comic. Between 20 guys, each one of them had like 1 or 2 comics done. And I'm like, you can't. The other guy came in when we went to this Comic-Con. He says, you can't make money with just one comic. I mean, you got to have a variety. You got to have, this or a little bit of that, a Dagwood and Blondie, Calvin and Hobbes, Star Wars or Iron Man or Captain America, or a little bit of everything. And
well, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, then, right?
Yes. And then, because I have a website now that I sell my comics on, I make about $50 a month, which is not a lot, but if I didn't have a variety of comics, there's no way I would even clear $50 a month.
Yeah. And so is it hard for you to keep, I mean, is your work episodic? And the reason why I ask that is because the nature of your plot lines, your stories are so different. Is that, is it hard to keep track of all of that, or are you at the point now where you're so used to doing it and you're so familiar with your various creative universes that, it comes really natural to you?
Well, and I think I told you this before, most of the books that I write, the comic books that I write, they're the novels that I was telling you about that I started writing a long time ago. Basically, I just took the novels and shaved them down and shaved off stuff that's, because most of these novels, I've been writing these novels for like 20 years. And, I mean, they're almost complete. So I was like, let me take a little bit out of these novels and break it into a storyboard and get an artist and let him run it out. And that's basically what I did. So they're easy to keep track of. These worlds are easy to keep track of. And also because I put myself in the story. So, I'm one of the characters, so I can actually, go into that fantasy, crazy, irresponsible world and say, oh, I did this or I did that. I mean, hey, if you got 2 ex-wives, they keep you in reality. And, every once in a while, you just want to cut loose, you know what I'm saying? I remember watching The Empire Strikes Back. I was just floored. I was like, what an incredible movie. As soon as I got home, I mean, the car wash opened up. Well, you got electric bill just showed up. And I was like, man, I was on a high, and reality just came in and just whacked me in the knees.
Okay, we realize that you, like many people, have issues with ex-wives.
Oh, yeah.
Someone wants to know, when you talk about your $50 that you make a month, is that net or is that gross?
That is just gross.
Go ahead.
Now, some months it goes up, but I mean, I'm borderline 50. I've never been under 50 so far, and so I'm trickling down.
And so, compared to what it costs to produce them, are you breaking even, or are you coming out just enough ahead to make it worthwhile? How's that working out?
No. If you're going to be an independent comic book creator, it's going to be very rare that you're going to break even. I mean, because, at least I've got something coming in, but the artists are pretty expensive. I mean, you can't cheat on the art because that's the meat of your book. So when you say, hey, artist, here's a script and here's some storyboards and this is what I want, they need to get paid. And if you don't pay them well, they're not going to hang around a long time.
Right,
so
right.
In a month's time, most of my books are about 24 pages long. I mean, if I got an artist that's doing $100 per page, I mean, it racks up pretty fast.
And so, somebody said what I was about to say there. It sounds like you're doing it for the love of the game.
Yes, I am. I mean, at some point, I'm hoping at some point somebody will see this and go like, for the Little Owl in the Cahaba County, I think the Cahaba County could rank up there with Family Guy. I mean, it's got the same punch. It's got the same punch, and it's got the same, snappiness. So at some point, somebody will say, hey, listen, we'd like to do a comic with that. And the Calvin and Hobbes side of it, Little Owl, he ranks up there. It's got the same punch and everything as Charlie Brown. I'm thinking, and they're trying to bring Charlie Brown back, and I don't think it's working because you're talking about a totally different world. But Calvin and Hobbes was kind of the upgrade to Charlie Brown. It was a little bit more risque, a little bit more, radical. So, I mean, I think what they need to be doing is a Calvin and Hobbes movie and not another Charlie Brown thing, because I don't know. From what I've seen, it's just not working.
Well, and I could see someone trying to do it, but let's be honest. Hollywood can mess up a one-car parade.
Yes. They can.
And as a creative, some creatives are so desperate that they'll take any deal because they think, any publicity is good for me, blah, 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 and yet then they get ripped off. But doing something well is not an easy task, as we see with the Sci-Fi Channel with every damn thing they do. So when you think in terms of maybe busting out, and you know what, what is it, Cuyahoga County?
Cahaba.
Is that how you say that?
Cahaba County.
Yeah. I love that. I love that, man. I mean, the writing is great.
Thank you.
And the art is very well done. And see, the thing is you're not really pushing to be overblown in it. You're telling a great story in a few panels. Excuse me, with some very, very, distinct and identifiable figures. Yeah. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I mean, in terms of, well, let me ask you this: how long has that been out? Has it been visible? Because I'm kind of curious.
Well, it's only been visible since about 2013. That's when I started HOBB Comics. So that's when it was actually in print and available to the public. So it hasn't been out that long. So.
Right. Okay, and so do you have any indications about how widely your readership, or how widely, what the, how wide your readership is? Because it sounds to me like what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the story out there, maintain the quality, and then see the crowd come to you, see things pick up. Is that kind of like your strategy right now?
Remember, you guys were talking about it on here a while back. The creativity and the drive to do that, to get it right, is everybody has that. Everybody on Black Science Fiction has that. But then on the other side of that is the promotion, and not a lot of us are good at that, and not a lot of us plotted and planned for that. It was so hard to get the thing actually done. Then now you're on the other side, and you're like, well, I got a website, and I go to a couple of conventions, and that's pretty much it. What blindsided me was having to, come down here. I had a house and everything set up in Missouri, and I had a workshop and everything. But now I'm back in Montgomery, Alabama, in an apartment complex. All my stuff is in the storage room. Half the time I can't even get to my comics. So I'm like, okay, I'm just down here to get set up. Once I get set up here, I think I can start going to Atlanta to these, Comic-Cons, promoting more. But it's all about having a good foundation to promote.
That's true. And the other thing is, it does cost money. It costs money to promote. Yes. You have really stupid people out there and who say, oh, all you need to do is get on Facebook. Okay? And
I wish.
And of course they're going to castigate me for how dare you say something like that, but that is stupid.
It is.
I know my worth as someone who does marketing. People are going to pay me $500,000 a year to do marketing, and I know exactly the utility of Facebook. Yes, you want to get your name out there, but the challenge is huge. You know, how do you get a critical mass of people to quote discover, unquote, you and help propel what your creativity forward? You know, get people to see what you've got, and that's a challenge that everybody faces.
And you're doing it in a sea of creators. I mean, you know, everybody's a creative. You know,
right? Have you gone to any of the conventions yet or not?
Yes, you remember I did C2E2, and then I just did one, the Alabama Book Festival here. They're starting.
Wait a
to
minute,
wake
you came up to C2E2, and we didn't have lunch.
Well, that was about 2 years ago. Remember?
Oh, all right, okay. I'll cut you some slack on that. But next time we got to have lunch, okay?
Oh yeah, I mean, I would have came to this one, but I mean, I'm in Alabama now, and the biggest thing down here is Atlanta, Mobile, Florida, and stuff like that. Right. So, and it like you say, it costs money to get to these events.
But fortunately, I mean, when you talk about where you are now, you're a lot closer to a lot of the
bigger venues.
Yeah, and a lot of the Black Age events too, which I think probably helps a lot.
It will when I get settled in here. Yes, it will.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, obviously you have to build. First of all, you want to build a marketing plan. You want to not waste time, and you for damn sure don't want to waste money. So, you know, taking your time and doing that and relocating. They say relocating, moving is the second most stressful thing that people go through. The first one being, you know, the death of a family member or something like that. So, you know, when somebody says, oh, I had to relocate and move everything here, you know, it's not just simple. It's not just, simple, oh, yeah, I just moved my crap down there, you know?
Yeah.
So,
it's crazy.
Alonzo wants to know what's the best money to make at cons. That's tough, Alonzo. You know, if you're lucky enough to get a good table, good location, have a lot of good people to go by, and you have a worthy product, then people will spend some money on what you have. But trying to estimate, I don't know.
I was amazed.
Go ahead.
I mean, when I went to C2E2, I mean, these people were buying comics hand over fist, and I went up there not expecting to sell. I mean, I was thinking, okay, I'll sell about 20 books, and I'll be okay. You know, I mean, the experience is what I was going up there for. And I went up there with this other publisher guy. I mean, they just kept buying books. I mean, we were selling books every couple of minutes. I'm like, and then one guy came over, he came over and he just, give me some of everything that you've got. I'm like, wow.
Wow. That's pretty cool. And about how much do you think you managed to sell?
I don't know. I mean, I really wasn't keeping track because there was so much buzz in the air. These people from these movie places came over and they were interested. They were looking at the little aisles. They go, you know, we don't have that many black male, you know, comics. And I was like, well, hey, it's a great idea. I think, you know, it'll work. And, you know, you're trying to promote. But I made some real good money, though. I mean, I was amazed. I mean,
and if, you know, if you don't know exactly how much money you made, next year when you're here, next time you're here, I'll hand all your money for you, okay?
Well, it kind of blindsided me because, and I know I made, you know, well over $1,000. But it kind of blindsided me because I was like, you know, every time that I tried to focus on this or that, somebody wanted to buy a comic and somebody wanted me to explain my comic. And I was like, yeah, I'm more than happy to. But then when the movie people came over, you know, I think it was the people who do, I can't think of the company, Nickelodeon, Viacom, they came by.
Okay, yeah.
And I was like, you know, these are the big guys. And so I'm trying to get my stuff, you know, and get him listen to what I'm doing and give him a couple of free samples and say, hey, listen, take this back and, you know, talk to him about it. You know, I'm totally open to this and that. But
sure.
I had somebody doing my money for me, and they could have totally ripped me off, but I would have been like, you know, fine.
Well, it sounds like you had a great response, and not only did you have a great response, but it also sounds like, you know, it was completely unexpected. So, of course, you know, you got all of that going on around you, and that also must have been pretty darn encouraging for you to keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, it's like I said earlier, as an indie, you're not going to make a lot of money, as it goes. My goal is to make a quality product. I mean, every book has to be quality. Don't try to cut corners here, don't try to cut corners there. Just go ahead and pay the money, make sure it's solid, and then when you can show it to somebody, they'll go like, okay, this is a solid piece of material. I can get the story. I understand where he's going with this. And then you can sell them on it better. And and that's what I try to do. Now, on the animation side of it, that's where you get the payout. I mean, somebody's going to say, hey, we like this idea. Can we make this into a cartoon or this or that? And that's what I was trying to go up there and do. And there were a lot of those businesses up there. And about 2 years ago, I got with Alonzo. And I think his name is Alonzo Von Treat.
Yeah, he's actually in the chat room right now.
Is he? Yeah, and let me post the animated feature that he did for me, and because I was like, okay, let me figure out if I can do an animated feature. I realized, man, animation is expensive. It's tedious. I mean, he was gracious enough to say, hey, Al, I'll show you what I'm doing. And that way you can see the product. Because I was like begging him. I said, listen, guy, I know you're focused on what you're doing, but could you please let me in on it and show me how you're doing this? That way at least I'll have some kind of inside knowledge and possibly help out. And he said, listen, I'll give you some slides you can do in your spare time, and that way you can help me along, because he said he had a business schedule. So I did a couple of slides and everything, body parts and stuff. Right. So, and we came out with this animated cartoon right here, which is, everybody loves it. It doesn't have any sound to it because that's a whole nother ball game. But well, I mean, also for you, you work in comics and you work in panels, but putting together commercials for your work probably would pay off as well too. Yes, it would. It would. We were talking about the styles of comics. This one we did here, it's, I think he said it was a 2D, and I kind of like 2D comics. I mean, I think they're better. I don't like the 3D stuff that they're coming up with nowadays. It just doesn't look good with comics. Right. And I don't know if you've seen the CG with the new Charlie Brown. It's all in CGI. No, but I think it probably looks like Peabody and Sherman, right? Yes, it does. It looks just like that. Yeah, I would guess, yeah. Yeah, it didn't work too well for me. I was like, well, comics should be, pow, pizzazz, colors, and, but that CG, I don't know, it just doesn't do it for me. But he was saying, why don't you do it in this? Because I wanted to do it in another style. He says, well, why not do this? It's quicker, it's easier, and everybody can learn it. I said, hey, let's go with that one. Well, and here's the other part. The other part, too, is, excuse me, when you think of your target market, people are used to seeing, these 3D constructs and those kinds of movies, and would probably not be as persuaded if they saw, all of us kids watch the Charlie Brown specials, but then when we saw Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, that was like a whole different thing, because it was stop motion, but it was 3D. And the market being what it is, you kind of have to keep up whether you want to or not in order to make yourself competitive. Yeah. But I think that there's certain types of cartoons with me that looks, you can't do like, when I saw the CGI Charlie Brown, I was like, well, no, that's not going to work. I mean, it's supposed to be fun and exciting, and what made Charlie Brown funny is the way it moves. It's that 2D etchy kind of stuff, and and that made it funny. It's kind of abstract. But now that you glossed it over, and every movement is a move. I remember when Lucy was she was walking over to Schroeder's piano, and then Snoopy was on the other side in her spot. And then Schroeder got up and walked away, and then, they started to arm wrestle for the spot. So, I remember that, yeah. And so, I mean, she's pushing it, and, she's sweating and she's shaking. I mean, that was part of the comedy because, Snoopy was winning,
Right.
So, I mean, that type of cartoon needs that kind of 2D. And I don't think it'll work in the 3D type.
I also think that the writing is less sophisticated now because I think people, the audiences today, they get very upset if you don't spoon feed everything to them.
Yeah.
All right. I don't want to call them dumbed down, and I would certainly not use I would certainly not use the term retarded in terms of having a retarded perception or ability to think on their own. But oh my God, I mean, you look at the crap that passes for movies, and you look at the things that end up being blockbusters.
Mm-hmm.
But
you have a different perspective because you've been here for a long time. You've seen.
I was going to say, I'm old as hell.
Well, no, you've seen the good stuff. These young people haven't seen. They haven't seen the Godfather series. They haven't seen, I guess, Ben-Hur. These really emotional, well-written, movies and/or cartoons, and all they've seen is SpongeBob, Ren and Stimpy, stuff that is really quick and it's really dumbed down. You don't have to think about it. You just have to laugh at it. Beavis and Butthead took off, and I was like, I don't understand this. I mean, why is people getting crazy about Beavis and Butthead? But people loved it. I was dumbfounded.
Yeah. Now, when someone like Viacom approaches you, what were they looking? What did they ask you specifically? Because they when people come to you, they tell you what they want, and then if you don't have exactly what they want, then they make some suggestions. Did they give you any suggestions for your work, or did they even say, well, we'd like to talk to you later? Because all of that would be great,
No, the guy came up, and I knew where he was from because he had a badge and everything. And I said, hey, man, this is Viacom. So when he came over, I said, hey, this is my comic. Here's the story about a little boy growing up in a housing project. It's kind of, tongue-in-cheek. There's nothing serious about it. He's growing up, and it's either Dennis the Menace or Calvin and Hobbes or Charlie Brown. And the whole thing is from his perspective, and how silly everything is. It deals with race, and it deals with poverty, and it deals with the relationship between the boy and his mother. And I'm the middle child, so I'm always trying to clamor for my mother's attention, which I never got.
Yeah. Right.
Because I've got my brother in front of me and my little sister behind me. The brother was first, so he got all the accolades and everything. Oh, I finally got a kid. Then the little girl is behind her because she had two boys and now she finally got a girl. So that's she's a fairy princess. But you got this guy in the middle who's clamoring to get attention, and she's like, you need to do it or you get slapped. So it's got all of that. It's got the family angle. It's got the the Leave the Beaver angle. It's pretty much got everything. And what did they say? He said himself. He says, we don't have any cartoons on TV right now where it's a little black boy. And I said, yeah, you're right. I mean, the only thing I know that you have even close to it is there was a Mexican girl, and I don't know what her name, Myra.
Dora the Explorer?
Dora the Explorer, yeah, at the time. And I am
so embarrassed that I know what that was. I apologize. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah,
you do it.
But Dora is so hot. That's all I'm going to say about that. All right. But okay, so that sounds like a pretty good impromptu meeting.
Yes.
Do you think anything will come of it?
Well, he bought 20 of each. So he bought 20 of the Cahaba County and 20 of the Little Al, issue number 1. Which I wish I had gave him issue number 2, but it hadn't printed up. I was using a different printer at the time, Kablam, and they're slow on purpose. Well, I'm not going to say they're slow on purpose. I'm just going to say the more you pay, the faster they work. So, it's crazy. I mean, like you can have it here at this much, or we'll send it to you here at this much, and the price is just steadily going up. And you're
right.
like, okay, man, this sucks. I got this thing in a couple of weeks, and I wasn't willing to pay that kind of money. And they see you coming.
Right. Well, that's it. See, if a producer buys that many copies of something,
mm-hmm.
it sounds to me like he'd be handing them out to other people.
Yes, and I did. I mean, when he left, I was like, hey, let me give you samples, blah, blah, blah. He said, no, I'm here to buy. Like, wow. So
very cool, Al. I mean, so we may see your shit. I mean, excuse me, we may see your work on Nickelodeon.
That's what I was worried about. I was like, man, this guy's gonna take my stuff because he's got the story and plot and everything. And
no. They would never. See, the thing is, when you're that big, you don't steal. Because the chances are likely you're not going to be able to get away with it very well.
That's what I heard. I said that to a guy there because not only were the big three were there. There was Viacom. What's that other company? They were there, but these copyright guys were there.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. They were walking around saying, "Oh, God, have you read the new copyright thing?" Blah blah blah. I'm like, why would they be here? Because there are people walking around stealing stuff. Chicago was an education. It was a pure education.
Well, we don't like suckers up here. Well, we do like them, but we like to take their stuff.
Yeah.
But, so that sounds very positive, Al. I wish you the best on that, man. That would just be great if that came through for you. So that's a good thing. Let me ask you this: Are you content with your stable of 6 comics? Do you have other stories that you think you're going to try to develop? You said that a lot of the genesis of a lot of those were books that you had written earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a broader base of creativity that you're thinking of getting out there, or are you really? I mean, it seems to me just from conversations we've had that, of course, obviously nobody listening to the show has really heard unless they were eavesdropping. But I mean that it sounds to me like you are very, very serious about getting your work to its best possible point. And that sounds to me like you may be sticking with what you've got. But I'm wondering, do you have more creative stories, more creative universes behind you? Yeah, give us just an overview. Don't give anything away that would be proprietary. But I mean, where are you going? More sci-fi, more sociology, more human life? I mean, what kinds of stuff are you looking at?
I'm a sucker for the sci-fi human drama thing. I love that. I love when you put a person. I got this one comic. Actually, it's a novel, but I went to put it into a comic, and it was just too expensive. And it was about this guy who does not want to die. He went into the Army. He's an admiral, and he's like, he has all this power and authority. And when he hears something like, well, on planet Zeta, they have this, process where you meld with this symbiont, and the symbiont, it keeps you alive. You can live for at least 200 to 300 years more. And this guy is using his position, because he knows all the congressmen and he knows the president. And he's like, hey, well, can I go to this planet? And he goes from these planet to planet stealing this technology and actually, threatening these people. So I wanted to do that one, and I think that's just going to have to be the novel. I mean, because he eventually, from where this one story comes in, he's not even human anymore. He's replaced everything and melded with everything, and now he's just totally obsessed with just surviving. And he becomes the bad guy of the story. It's kind of like the Darth Vader thing. How Vader used to be good and then he turns evil, not because he was evil. It's because his passions. He wanted to keep his wife. Vader wanted to keep his wife alive. He wanted to make sure his mother stayed alive. And in doing that, he went over to the dark side. He said, "Hey, can you keep people alive?" And God promised him a lot of things that he couldn't do. So I like that aspect of it. You start out good, but in order to do good, you have to do evil, and you have to take your reader along with you.
So the human drama is the kind of story that you're really drawn to because is it mostly because you like pitting people against each other and against themselves?
Well, it's mostly because I understand the human, having been born in Alabama, of all places, the toilet that is Alabama and Montgomery. I mean, my God, I've seen things that just, remember that woman a couple of months back? She was driving on the beach in a van. She had her kids in the back, and she was just driving into the surf. She just wanted to kill herself and her kids. I mean, and then they found out later, she was on welfare for a while. She tried to get off welfare, and then her bills weren't paid. The bill collectors harassed her for a while. She had like an army of kids, and she just got to the point where she just snapped. And living in projects, you see people like that. They're struggling. They're trying so hard, and then every once in a while there's a glimpse of hope. Oh, here comes your income tax check, and you're like, oh my God, income tax check. That'll hold me up for a little bit of while, and then here comes the city. Oh, you got your car tax, and you got this and all that, and the city council is going to raise the property tax and blah blah, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you have these people in. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was saying, or your transmission goes out or something. It's like the perversity of the universe is always testing you,
Yes. Now put that with, my mother, my mothers and fathers and stuff like that, they come from a place called Mount Meigs where they had to pick cotton. And she took us there one time to show us, oh, you kids don't know how good you got it. I mean, on the ground in Mount Meigs, at ground level, it wasn't hotter than Iraq. I mean, Iraq was pretty darn hot. But I mean, if you gotta bend over and pick up cotton for an entire day in that type of heat, and there's no refrigeration, there's no cold water, there's just water. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, the suffering is on so many different levels, and people just don't appreciate it. And I love those human drama things, whereas people just go to God. Oh, I'm just gonna give everything to God, and I'm just gonna. And there are people down here right now. You tell them that hey, there is or there is not a God, and these people will look at you like you're from another planet, because they've been beaten down. Their mind has been, it's like an alien come down and just took their brain out and just took off,
Yeah. Well, the one phrase that I've never used in writing, but I really understand and, is also the basis for many, many, many stories is when people say that someone is living or people are living a life of quiet desperation. And in far too many instances, people are living that life. And
yes, they are.
You look at what's happened in the last 2 to 3 generations in this country, and there's been a very determined effort to separate our entire country into 2 classes of people. At one time we had the greatest middle class in the history of humanity. Yeah. And then now you have a very determined bunch of rich people who want just 2 classes. They want the very, very wealthy and those who they can use and abuse, whenever they want for whatever reason. And that's tough. That's a tough way to have to live if you have to
you're on the
fall
bottom.
in that. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. Well, and Malcolm X and all these other guys, if you go on the YouTube, they said it then. And I'm like, wow. And nobody actually, we didn't listen because we're in the digital age. But, I mean, they're like, we're on the bottom rung, and there's people right now trying to undermine us to keep us down here, blah, blah. And they're going on, they're ranting on, and I'm like, wow, these guys are saying that, and it's 1950-something or 60-something. And, I mean, and here it is decades later, and everybody's like, hey, they're trying to keep us down. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, but you know what? Here's the thing. This is the essence. I think this is the essence of the good use to which creativity can be put. Whole movements of things have grown out of like a song, a poem, a story, even now a soundbite. And it's funny that you gravitated to science fiction because this is the one I keep coming back to this quote, and I apologize to people who are sick of me saying it, but Asimov said something that so grabbed me and is so important to what I do today. And Asimov said, here's his quote: "Individual science fiction stories may seem as trivial as ever to the blinder critics and philosophers of today, but the core of science fiction, its essence, has become crucial to our salvation if we're to be saved at all." And for damn sure, that has a lot to do with people living the lives of quiet desperation. If you're living a life of quiet desperation, if you're living hand to mouth, if you can't pay your bills, if you have your kids in your car and you're thinking about driving into the surf, what can motivate you? What can pull you away from that so that life becomes a more attractive option than not? And so, I think that that's a huge thing that creatives can do. They're inspiring songs. They're inspiring books. I mean, like every now and then there'll be a motivational book that everybody seems to grab onto because it does touch a chord. And so, what you do with your comics is great, man, because it deals with the drama. Okay, it deals with the drama of life and of living. And so once you get to that point where you can convey that was the beauty of Peanuts.
Yes, it was.
The issues that they did in Peanuts were universal to
everybody,
to life, to living, to life and living. And so even having Lucy with her, the doctor is in thing, where someone comes and confesses some thing that bothers them. This is the essence of the kind of thing that you do.
You just remind me, William, that one my favorite Peanuts joke. It was what and you may remember this. It was like Lucy and Linus was talking about something, and then she couldn't get his blanket away from him or whatever, and she said, "That's it, I give up," and she ran out. And then Linus looks at the television and is like, "Where do you go to give up?"
Well, and that's it. But see, look at what crazy ass people are doing today.
Yeah.
You have, and it's almost exclusively crazy ass white men. They figure, hey, I got a gun. I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory. I'll make sure the cops kill me, and then people will remember my name. As miserable and as worthless as my life is.
Not just white, but black too. Black too.
But the ones who do the mass killing,
dude. Yeah. Okay.
We all get pissed off. I mean, and the one story I tell is about the guy who's at the movie theater and he wants to get to the seats in the middle of the aisle. So he, excuse me, and he steps on one guy's foot, and the guy just pulls out a gun and shoots him. Well, the guy didn't pull out the gun and just shoot him because he stepped on his foot. The guy pulled out the gun and shot him because he had had enough of everything.
Yeah.
And so if that's the kind of life we have, then it's very important for us to have outlets.
Yes.
I don't want to talk about. Well, all right, I'll tell everybody.
You hit on something.
Everybody. Here's the thing. Everybody knows I'm about 184 in white people years, but there was a comic, a political comic way back when, called Pogo, and that's where the saying "we have met the enemy and they is us," or they are us, and so that was another one of those cartoons that I think helped the sanity of a nation, and so. I don't want to put too big a spin on what you do, but man, can you imagine if just the things that you do? First of all, there's still projects out there. There's still there's more and more poverty out there. So if somebody decides to do your work and do it well, I think that would be a great thing. Hang on one second, man.
Go ahead.
Yeah, let me do this real quick. You're listening to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. If you're not a member, join. If you want to see some of the best creative work done by African Americans today, there is a host of art, stories, movies, and things there. So, join up. It doesn't cost anything. Meet some of the people that you hear on, well, actually, you can almost meet everybody you hear on one of these radio shows because all of the people who are being interviewed are members of the site. So stop in, check it out. So anyway, for you...
Well, I think that Hobbie County would be, it would rank right up there with Family Town. All I would have to do is get it on there. And that's, that's my challenge to Family Guy, or Family Guy, I should say.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit of the nuts and bolts of what you do. I mean, now you have artists who help you out doing the artwork. You do the panels script. Or the script, the panels, and get the story down. Let's talk about the business side of doing the business. Once you do that, once you've done a script, how long are we talking between the time when you finish up a script and kind of get it out to your people until you can get back the finished product that actually goes online? Yeah, and online and gets printed. Tell us a little bit about that.
I've been doing it for a while, so now I can actually do it in a week's time.
Great.
I come up with the idea on the weekend. Monday I give it to my artist. He'll normally have it, he'll send me a rough draft by Tuesday. And, if I need to make some changes, I'll ask him to change things there. But most of the time, since we've been working together so great, he knows what I'm looking for. So I said, okay, change this, and he said this, and change this bubble here. Normally, by Tuesday evening, he'll give it to me by Tuesday. By Wednesday, he gives me back the finished product. It's inked up and everything. I send it that day to my colorist, who's in Korea, and he'll normally have it done in 24 hours. So by Friday, I got a finished product that I can post to Facebook or, anywhere.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, it took a while to get it that way.
No, of course, you refine the process, yeah. Nobody starts out being perfect.
Yeah.
And how often do you come up with your scripts? What's the kind of like the lag time between issues?
Now the comic books, I had them already written out in the novels. All I had to do was go through the novels and take out certain pages and cut and paste. I want to say this and I don't want to say that and stuff like that.
Right.
That was pretty easy. So I could go up to a freelance artist and go, listen, I have a 24-page comic. I'll pay you $100 per page, and for 25 pages, and I'll pay you half up front and half when it's done. And normally they go for it. They say, okay, I can do this, and they know if they know that you're going to pay on time, believe me, they'll do it.
Right.
And
so so you've gotten to the point now where the process has been refined well enough that you can have pretty quick turnover.
Yes, and the only reason that's the way it is because I've had these artists all for a long time, and they know my process. Artists don't like to redraw stuff. They hate
right.
And artists, I tell you, William, artists are not the easiest people in the world to work with.
Get out.
They are. They are not. I know you know this, but I'm just saying. Most of these guys are, loners and slackers, and they're married, and they need money. So they don't want to spend a whole bunch of time bent over a table doing the same picture over and over again. And you're saying, nah, I don't like that. Could you redo this? So what I do, I put it in my contract. I say, okay, guys, here's what will happen. I'll send you a script, and I'll send the script with storyboards. So there's no, if I say fire hydrant, and, you can read the word fire hydrant, and then you have a picture of a fire hydrant. There's no way that can go wrong,
Right.
So that's how I refine the process. You make sure that when the artist gets the script and the storyboards, There's no veering away from the main idea, because artists are creative people. They love to veer away from your main idea. And then get angry. And then they get angry when you correct them.
Well, creatives are not easy to work with, you know. And I'll tell you how I know authors are buck crazy, just buck wild crazy. I use a fulfillment house for doing my books, and the people who do the work are based in the Philippines. So of course they're completely opposite the clock. I think Philippines is the same time zone as New York, but you know, opposite night and day. So they got these people working through the middle of the night. But whenever they call me or I call them, they are so obsequious. They are so, yes sir, Mr. You know, it's you know, I've never been Mr. Hayashi more than my whole life than with these people, and because they're used to dealing with crazy ass creatives. Authors are nuts. You know, and they bitch about everything, and I tell my reps, look, first of all, take a breath. You don't have to be on pins and needles. I'm like a regular guy. And they you know, of course they don't believe me right away. But you're right. Creatives are a very different breed. And the thing is, you know, they just did a study that came out in the last week or two about creativity in the brain. And I didn't read the study. But it's I'm telling you, you know, I understand exactly what you're going through. But the fact that you have the business side down where you have the contract and you supply them with something even better, which is storyboards. Most people probably don't even do that. So that's got to help your process a lot, doesn't it?
Well, it helps your bottom line because, like I say, artists don't like redrawing something. The first time you ask an artist to redraw something, he's going to say, okay, no problem. The second time, he's going to get a little irate, you know, but he's still going to draw it. But by the third time, I mean, now you're, you know, the whole project, you know, is jeopardized because you've got 25 pages to go, and now this guy's kicked off at page 5. And, you know, but you want you want the project to look good, and the only way the project will look good if the artist is happy. So, you know, and you don't want to, and I learned this the hard way, the last thing you want to do when an artist says, well, I think it looks good the way it is. And then, you know, and I used to say, okay, well, you know, because you don't want to, you know, compromise anything, but you have to stand up and say, no, I'm paying you, guy. I mean, I want it this way because it goes with the rest of the story, you know, and you don't want to do that, you know, with artists because now they're ticked off and they're not really trying. So the storyboards wipe all of that out. You know, if you do a storyboard and you got a script right there that says, you know, fire hydrant on the corner of a busy New York sidewalk, that's what he should draw. But then you have the artists that they want to be creative and they draw a polka dotted fire hydrant when the fire hydrant is supposed to be red, and you know it's crazy. But it helps your bottom line because you know after a certain number of redraws, revisions, it starts to cost you. He says after every 4th revision, it's a $50 extra charge.
Right.
So it just helps your bottom line.
But it's you know it's just good to have everything laid out in your contract, and that's how you get it done, and you get it done well. A lot of creatives are not as facile in you know in handling the business part, and sometimes that's a little hurdle for them too. Let me ask you this. Have you ever worked collaboratively from the creative side? Yes, you have your inkers and your colorists and things like that, but have you ever worked with someone else creating a story? Or are all these things like completely out of your mind?
I have tried. I mean, you know, it's just that people just, you know, I always say the joke, and I got a GIB joke. It says, if you get 5 black men in a room and there's no basketball, they're just going to kill each other. You know, so I mean, you know, you try to get with these guys and hey guys. I mean, I know a lot of creative people here, and you know, in all the places that the military has sent me. And I think, guys, let's do something really, you know, great and you know, classic this and classic that. And you get creatives in there, and they're like, well, I want to do this and I want to do that, and they just, I don't know, they just don't want to work together to pull the project together. And now I've gotten with some white dudes, and they'll get in there and they'll give and take, and they'll give and take. They're just as crazy, but at least they're trying. They see the end result, you know?
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I guess I'm at the point where I just should be writing on my own, because I know me. I'll wake up in the morning, I'll get out of bed, and I'll go straight to my computer, I'll check my mail, and then I'll start to work on the story. It's like you were saying about your writing. You know, you say make it a job. You said that a couple weeks back.
Yeah,
you said that a couple weeks back.
It is. Well, it's true. I mean, I think anybody who's a creative, you know, whether they be an artist or an author or filmmaker or, you know, a cartoonist or whatever, you know, the thing that you have to face up to fairly quickly, I believe if you're going to be successful, is the fact that you are an entrepreneur. You know, you are a business person, and whether you like to think of it like that or not, excuse me, unless you're doing what you're doing strictly for you and you don't give a damn about money or anything else, you have just become a small business person.
Yeah.
And by that virtue, then you have to pick up some good business habits if you're going to survive and if you're going to thrive. And I think that might be the hardest part for many creatives who think the way that they do, and what makes them great creatives might not also be the same thing, and most times it seems it doesn't, you know, might not make them the great, you know, business people that they are.
Yeah. Well, most of the time they have a wife or a spouse or something that can do half the business.
Well, there's that. You know, I will tell you this. Before I became a writer, one of the things that really pissed me off about my ex was I would be working at night, you know, either writing software or testing things or testing people's websites, stuff like that. And she would, you know, the one thing she would say that did piss me off was, when are you going to be done playing on the computer?
Yes.
And, you know, come on. You can't, you're not supposed to shoot your wife or anything. But, you know, when somebody, I'm thinking about all the money I'm bringing in playing on the computer, and it just, it was a little tough dealing with it. They don't see it the way you do. I mean, I've had two wives, and both of them, they think I'm playing around. And it's you know, they see me at 10 o'clock at night, and then they see me again at 5 a.m. You know, have you been up all night? You know, you're just playing some Dungeons and Dragons game. And I've been sitting up all night writing and plotting stories, and, you know, she's been sleeping. I'm like, no, I'm serious about this, you know. And my first wife really didn't get it. She said, listen, you black and you Poe, why are you trying to write a book? Okay. Yeah. No, I know. And I probably shouldn't have brought it up because, you know, it's not fair that the wives can't defend themselves. But you know, just saying something like that kind of it affected me in a way that was not positive, you know, to do the work.
Exactly.
I don't know if I could have written books if I was still married.
Really?
Anyway, that's another topic. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. The environment that I grew up in, the housing project, it didn't allow you to be. It didn't allow you to have imagination. It didn't allow you to. I mean, if I had a comic book on the playground, some guy like, what are you doing? You know, what is this? You know, and they snatch it and then they tear it up, and you know, and they show it to everybody else, and they're like, he's reading. You know, he's trying to. You know, Captain America, you know, and I mean, I actually got my butt kicked from reading comic books. So I'm like, man, this is a harsh environment.
Yeah, there's an odd thing that is in our culture, at least the black side of me. The Japanese side is completely different. But there is a repudiation of intellect that I find extremely distasteful. You know, like the way they treated nerds, or you know, if you spoke like the way I speak now rather than the way I spoke when I was growing up, they go, well, what are you trying to do? Who are you trying to be? And I'm going, I'm not trying to be anybody. This is me. And then so if you run into a kid like you reading a comic book on the playground, which is feeding your imagination, it's feeding your imagination, and then they try to take that away from you or punish that out of you. That just never made sense to me, and that's something that we got to quit doing. You know, we have all of this nonsense.
I don't think we're ever quit doing that because, I mean, it's like it's hardwired. And I look at this rap music and the way these guys sit there and they 4-letter words and women this and bitch and all this. It's not like they're trying to expand and grow better and bigger and make our society better. It's just like, man, in South Central, we do this and we blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay,
I know.
but, you know, that...
It's not really nurturing. No, you're right. It doesn't nurture anything other than some pretty artificial values that are not going to be, they're not survival-oriented.
Yeah.
And then people say to me, what do you mean black culture is not survival-oriented? I go, well, why don't you ask Tupac about that shit? Oh, excuse me. I'm so sorry. Anyway, but...
I don't even know who Tupac is. I heard about him.
Well, here's the thing. You know, when you look at where you came from, and you've made no bones about it, you know, you grew up in essentially public housing, and yet now look at what you do. Obviously, the creativity was not sucked out of you. And I think that's something that we could really figure out how to instill in our kids. And one of the things that I remember, this was a little while back, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I was part of a fairly big symposium here in Chicago about creativity in black children. And one of the things that was constantly brought up was if they don't see it, they won't know it. And this is why, you know, like having Barack Obama president for 8 years is so cool, because there's kids out there who don't know anything but a black president.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. But that's the thing. You know, if we cut the funding to schools, well, what are we cutting out? Well, we're cutting out art. We're cutting out music. We're cutting out, and politically, we've cut out social studies. We've cut out government. We've cut out anything that has to do with cause and effect or fosters an understanding of how this country is supposed to work. So again, you know, your work, the work that you have that is tracked toward children is an essential component of our culture. And people have to look at it that way.
Well, I mean, I used to enjoy Dennis the Menace, Charlie Brown, Calvin and Hobbes. Those things spoke to me. And like you said earlier, it was a universal thing. Everybody has experienced this. You walk in the house and your feet are muddy, and your mom goes, hey, what are you doing? You know, and she starts screaming. You know, some of those things are universal, and everybody can relate to it.
Just as an aside, I watched my mother do that to Jesse Jackson when he came over to our house. He had muddy feet, and he was tracking mud in the house. Well, my mother was a political activist here in Chicago. Jesse Jackson and Operation Push are headquartered here in Chicago. So, you know, they're crossed paths many times. But it made me feel good that she hollered at an adult just as bad as she hollered at me about getting those muddy shoes off the carpet. But again, you know, going back to the creativity thing, let me ask you this. Have you considered doing, or do you do any outreach to younger kids yet?
I haven't had a chance to. I did some volunteering here at the Salvation Army, but that's only because that was my neighborhood Salvation Army. In the old days, you know, and I don't even know why, but even some of the other cities that I went to, you have these horrible housing projects, and then outside the housing projects there's a Salvation Army thrift store. It's like they go hand in hand, a pawn shop, Salvation Army thrift store, and a really bad used car dealer. But and some signature loan places. But I went there and did some volunteer work for Christmas because I think it's good to do that. But no, I haven't done anything else since I've been back because, like I say, I'm trying to get set up here, and I begin to realize the only way I'm going to get set up here is just go ahead and plop down the money and buy a house, start getting set up here, and second house. I mean, that's 2 mortgages, so. And I just haven't had the chance to do it.
Yeah, somebody's taking issue with a lot of the generalizations that I have been saying. But generalizations and stereotypes exist for a reason, and you know whether we want to, and obviously there's no such thing as 100% this or 100% that. But there is a bell-shaped curve of, how things happen. You have outliers on either end, and then you have the majority of people who are kind of in the middle, who either hold certain views or behave certain ways, or hold, have certain values. And there are definitely schools out there that are trying to do better. I happen to work with an elementary school like that, but unfortunately they're starving. They're starving our educational system of funding, and that's a tough row to hoe. Teachers, volunteers like me, people on the outside, they donate, a lot of money for art supplies, for musical instruments and things like that, but it's coming from outside of the school system. It's not in the school system anymore because they're being starved. And that's a tough thing, because you want to maintain that level of creativity, because I mean, how do you have hope if you can't think of something better? If you can't think of something better.
If your mind can't go beyond the electric bill, the light bill, what are the kids going to eat tonight? If you can't go beyond that and dream for a better day, you're going to do like that lady on the news, and she just drove into the ocean with her kids. I mean, she just said, hey, there's no place here for me or my kids. I'm just going to kill myself. And that kind of despair, I saw that when I was a kid, and I was like, this is horrible. I mean, why would that lady do this? Or why would she do that to her children? Why, and you shouldn't have that kind of despair, but, whether you do it or not, it's going to be there. I mean, it's been around, Hitler killed thousands and thousands of Jews, just wiped them out, and other people just sat there and watch, and you're going to have horrible things like that happen, so I just think you got to have your schools to the point where you have art, and the art that came into my life basically came from a lot of whites that came from New York City, a Catholic priest, just white people coming to the housing project. They were either with the Catholic Church or these organizations to get voters' rights for blacks, to get us registered and stuff, And believe me, they were like putting their lives in their hands. And they're like, we're giving a class up here at the community center, and it's going to be art, or it's going to be 4-H club, or it's going to be Boy Scouting, and I ate that stuff up.
Yeah, all of those things do tend to expand a child's mind. I was going to, what was I going to ask you? I forgot now. I should write these things down. One of the things that I like about, one of the things that I just thought of before was, once you get situated, imagine how cool it would be if you could spread your comics around to, elementary schools in the area and open up that channel of creativity, help, do what you can to help kids. But again, you have to be settled. It takes money to do that. But
well, I'm doing that now. I just talked to one of my artists, Alex, a while back, and I was saying, Alex, when I get settled in here, I'm going to have to, start hitting some of the schools, giving away free samples, and, since there's a lot of schools there, we're talking about, a lot of books. So, I said, can you find me somebody that, can give me a lot of books for a little bit of money, and that's his business. That's what he does. He's a, artist and layout person. He does posters, signs, brochures, and stuff. So, you got to find a printer that can print out a lot, and then, they'll cut you a deal. So when that time comes, you go to the school. You go to the school and you say, hey, here's some samples.
Just a hint, that's the kind of thing that a lot of these crowdsourcing sites, you generally will get a little bit of a nice bump in response when you say, I'm looking for a little bit of money so that I can reprint these comics so that we can get them distributed in the schools. So there's an avenue there possibly. Okay, so let's take a look down the road. You mentioned that you've got some creative things that you want to do in the future. If you get to the point where there's the cartoon, What if, let me ask you this, what if somebody wants to buy your intellectual property? You know, they say, well, we would like to take this over, and they do that because how do you feel about other people managing what was your intellectual property? Some people don't want to let it go. Some people go, well, I'll take the money because I can always do something new.
Exactly.
Which side? Yeah, where do you fall on that?
I remember you asked that question a couple of times, and I had to think about it for a while because I love my property, and I can't see anybody else doing my properties. But if a guy walks up and says, "Listen, Al, we'll give you $10 million for your property," that I can walk away with because I know I can turn it around and do more of my stuff. But you don't want to get like, $250,000 or something like that,
Right.
That you'll burn that up in, like I guess a house payment or whatever, and you're right back where you started. And they can take your property and just fly with it.
So it has to make sense on a business level for you.
Yes, it has to be pretty significant for me to, kind of launch and go my own way to turn my back on it. And I wouldn't do that. I would say, listen, by the way, I have some scripts that I'd like to be on your team. That way, it's my project, so I know how it lives and breathes. You want to hire me?
Yeah.
That's after I sell it to them.
Well, I mean, it's fun to think. I mean, I think of that kind of like when I buy a lottery ticket. When they go, oh, it's up to $63 million, or whatever. And I go, and I go buy a ticket. I'm not buying a ticket necessarily to win because I did the math. And for those of you who have not done it or maybe are not as factual in math as I may be, I've done the math, and you have almost the exact chance of winning whether you play or not. So keep that in mind when you go buy your ticket. But the thing is I'm buying a fantasy. I'm buying that fantasy like, okay, well, if this dollar turns into 63, well, two-thirds of it, whatever, $40 million, what would I do with the $40 million? And that, what that does, the first thing that does is it gives me the freedom to ply my art without having to worry about paying the daily bills.
Yeah.
And, for me, that's a big thing. I got to go out there and I got to de-virus and de-porn computers and set up networks. Well, I'm just saying. And that's what pays my bills. But I would love to be a full-time writer. And it sounds like you're close to doing that, right?
I am. I mean, I'm retired from the military, so as long as when you're retired, as long as you live within your means, you don't have to work.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing because I've worked all my life and I've paid a ton of child support. And I mean, I've always been on the bottom, and to not have to work is, it's a beautiful thing.
Do you think that, either subconsciously or even consciously, it allows you a more freer creativity because you're not under the clock, you're not, you're not counting the pennies?
Yes, it does. The thing about retirement, a lot of people think, oh, man, it's just like you said, man, I would love to just write, and not have to work and deal with these dummies all day. But it's a double-edged sword. Now that you don't have to deal with those dummies every day, at some point you're going to want to deal with them again because being 100% off the grid and, you're self-supportive and you can write all day long, your health, if you're not careful, your health tends to go down. You slowly go insane because you're not coming into contact with, idiots all day, and your brain doesn't have to be challenged. Your brain can do, it's like my creatives right now, my projects, I can jump in from world to world and just run. I can jump in Cobb County and run with it and jump to, Torrey and just run with it. But then, if you keep doing that all day, your reality, you have to deal with that outside world, and that outside world has to nag you. And I don't even know how it works because it just hit me in a really bad way. And I was like, wait a minute. And, you learn about this stuff in AARP magazine.
That guy ARP has been stalking my ass for about 10 years now.
I'll bet. They were stalking me too. I'm like, I'm not old. Why do you keep writing me?
Yeah. They keep trying to get me with this free bag I can get. So
yes.
Somebody wants to know, do you have any idea at this point, let's say over the next year, what conventions you might be thinking of attending? Do you think you'll come back up to C2E2, Al?
Not until I get settled. I mean, right now I'm looking at a property. I'm trying to get it, settled and trying to, like I say, all my stuff. I'm living out of the storage room. Everything I got in my apartment is kind of like, it's kind of helter-skelter a little bit. And
right.
I don't think I could do like I did when I was, in Missouri. I don't think I can just pack up the van and drive up to C2E2, set up the table and, do all of that and then turn around and come back because, like I say, without a home base, you got to have that home base to operate out of.
Yeah, it is tough. It is tough. But that does not preclude the possibility of you doing so once you're settled. So,
yes.
Like I ask everybody else, if you're going to be at any of these, go to any of these conventions, try to drop that notice in the BSFS events calendar. Because in that way people can check you out. Had I known you were going to be at C2E2, I probably would have gotten off my big ass and gone over there. Well, no, I mean they want. There. Yeah, they want a lot of money, and it's at McCormick Place, and there's.
Yes, very expensive. Very.
Yeah,
expensive.
and parking there is like just to drive in the garage. I think is like $16.
Yeah, that was.
And if you stay for any time, it's like $26. And then to take, I'm on the north side. If I have to take public transportation down there, then I'm on the bus for an hour and a half, an hour the train and the bus. So even and I know how lazy that sounds because there are people who come from all over the country and they're going, William, you ain't nothing but fun. But I like my creature comforts, and I don't really like dealing with the public, and I think that's one of the reasons why I don't go. And I've made the value proposition that for me, going to these conventions at this point, if I'm not a panelist or something like that, to sell, even if I sell 100 books, okay, so that's X amount of dollars, but it just hasn't sunk into me to be cost effective for me, and I may have to change up that thinking.
Yeah.
Now, excuse me, when in the future, when you start branching out, do you have a marketing plan to expand your visibility?
I had one, but like I say, other than going to all of the Comic-Cons, because there's a list now.
Right.
I mean,
sure.
they come out with an actual list that, all right, Florida's going to kick off first, and then they're going to move to Atlanta, then they're going to move to Mobile, Alabama. There's a Wizard Con, and there's this con. They actually have a Southern Con. And
right.
and now a lot of little local shops are trying to do their own cons. They're plopping this money into these promoters, and these promoters are renting a building and they're trying to do their own stuff. So I'm just going to see how it plots out because right now there's a big glut on comic books with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all these other things, these movies coming out. So everybody wants
right.
to have a Comic-Con, and I'm thinking by the time I get settled in, they would have burned out on all of the pretty much the white titles, and then start digging into some of the black science fiction stuff. Some of these, like the Techno Shaka Zula, or I did this one book. I used to like the story of what was his name? Nat Turner. The slave who just got tired of it. He said, "Man, I'm tired of it. I'm just going to kill every white person I see." And they got there and they started. I wrote a book about that, and it turned into a comic book. And I'm trying to find an artist for it right now. I have the artist. He's on my Facebook, but he's playing coy. I hate when artists play coy. They're like, "Well, I've got several things on my schedule, and I'm trying to do that." I said, "Dude, I'm talking about money." And
right.
they play coy, but eventually they come back to me and they say, "Okay, Al, what are you thinking about?" But I like the story, and I'm trying to get that done, and I'm hoping that plays out. But I don't know.
It reminds me, in 1975, when Saturday Night Live started, Garrett Morris was on the cast, And he recounted a story where he said he was getting crap from a lot of his friends for selling out and being on, network television and stuff. And he said, they kept giving him a hard time until they did this one skit where I think he was in jail wearing prison clothes, and he was singing a song going, I'm going to get me a gun and kill every white person I see. And he did that, and all of a sudden his friends did 180 and thought, oh, man, that's so cool that you're on TV. So it's just a matter of perspective and how you sell it, man. How you sell it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, when they do stuff like that, everybody's always going to be negative. I don't know why, but it's just like I was telling that thing about the housing project. I mean, they will beat you up, man. They will. By the time you get, and I hope there's no children in the housing project like it was when I was there, because I mean, it's just like notice my voice doesn't sound black,
right?
And so I had the same problem you had, probably a little bit worse. I spoke in words, and
right.
I didn't say "ain't got no," and what you going down there for? Stuff like that with that rugged thing. So when I spoke, people, the black guys, the Mandinka types, they hated that. They're like, who is that? Yeah. That's our Hobbie. He lives down there in the bottom down there. And they go like, well, let's just beat him up for, spite, for sounding different. I'm like, man, you can't get a break in this place. But that's the environment. The environment, it tries to bring you down. And I realized, I had to teach it with my grandmother. She said, hey, man, don't let them bring you down. Because you do what you want to do. And she said that until I decided I wasn't going to join the church. She said, oh, no, you got to go on with the flow. So
how is your work accepted? I mean, I don't know how many members of your family are around. I know about your mother, obviously. But when you were growing up, you had two siblings, you had other people in your family around. Were they pretty supportive of you being a creative, or were they, like you said before, were they really hardcore about you better find something that's going to make you money? And how do they feel now, seeing your, at least the modicum of success that you have today?
I haven't had that huge success, so they're like, he's doing comics. I mean, he's retired and he's doing comics, I guess they look at it like a crazy old man yelling at his computer in the middle of the night, They don't look at it as a big success. It's like, yeah, he's got to do something,
Right.
But I'm thinking once I make that big deal or, that's when I'm going to walk over there and say, guys, remember what you guys were talking about, the grindstone? I broke the grindstone. The grindstone answers to me now.
And so you think it's just a matter of time. I think it's just a matter of time, by the way. I've told you
that
about yeah.
I mean, if you produce good stuff and you're focused on your material, I always go to these conventions and these guys, we're sitting at the table and they're going down here in Atlanta and Mobile, they're going like, man, I really should have worked on this page a little bit more before I send it to the printer. Okay, dude, you saying that now?
Right.
So if you're producing good stuff and you're going over it and believe me, it's hard. When like I said earlier, when an artist say, I don't want to draw that over again,
right.
And you're like, well, I'm paying you to draw it over again. Draw it. You don't want to tick this guy off because you got 25 more pages to go, but say it, piss him off and say, redraw it now. I want you to redraw it yesterday. You emailed me 2 weeks ago, and stuff like that. So that when you get to the
go ahead. I'm sorry.
So that when you get to the floor of some convention or wherever, you're not going, I wonder if my stuff is good, because you're seeing everybody else's stuff.
Right.
And you don't want them to come over and say, dude, that page totally sucks. I was talking to that. Remember that artist I was telling you about that I'm trying to recruit now? He has a thing on Facebook, and everybody's telling him how great his work is. Well, and they eat it up. Their heads get large because when you post something on Facebook, what is everybody going to say? They're going to say, dude, you suck. Or they're going to say, hey, man, great work. That's awesome. These guys, these artists, they get these big heads, and they totally suck. You know, and I don't say anything because until they ask me, that's when I tell them they suck. You know?
Well, I mean, I think it's that way for all creatives. I mean, I
yes, you're right.
Ask to read their things because they know I'm a writer, and in some cases it's very, very good, and in some cases it could use work. But I'll tell you the thing that I find most often. A lot of the people, when I say, here's my opinion, I think this can be improved, they really didn't want me to do that. What they wanted was they wanted a cheerleader. They wanted me to say that, oh, this is the best thing I've ever seen in my entire life, and you have no need to change anything or to do anything different. And very rarely do we run into somebody, especially somebody starting up, who is at that level.
Yes.
So it's and the thing is, I suspect that you have a number of good things that help you build good business habits. The military is pretty good for at least making you understand that when you do your best,
yes,
you recognize it, and you may not get recognition for it, but you for damn sure get singled out when you don't do your best or when you do less than your best. And so, when you with your trial and error, hopefully you get artists who, when you make suggestions, understand that it has to match your creative, your vision. I got very lucky. The guy who did the cover for my latest book normally does like album covers, but he was great. And if anybody's interested, I at least popped up the new cover for my book in BSFS. But he, I had a vision, and I explained to him. We talked for about 45 minutes, and they said, "Great, I got it." And when he took a little while, I think probably a week, and he put out something, and it was great. But I had some suggestions, and he said no problem. He said no problem because he was working off of my vision, and he was professional enough to know that
to do it for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I wanted was what I wanted. And so sometimes, like we said earlier, getting a creative who is that business savvy, or at least able to attack business that way, it's rare. Alonzo said artists use Facebook only to stroke their egos.
Yeah, he's right. I mean, a lot of times these guys, they just, oh, great, man, you're the. I know these guys from a long time ago. They were from Philly, and they were like, oh, we're great. I'm like, no, guys. I think your style is all etchy and scratchy. It's not solid. If you draw a picture and it's hard on the eyes, and I'm reading it, it doesn't make the picture enjoyable. The colors don't jump out at me. It needs to be like a meal. I need to say, okay, I love the art. Is there a story here? The words need to be, you don't need to use those really weird lettering that some people use. Make sure it's the standard comic, text, Comic Sans, that everybody can read and that they're spaced properly. And, I mean, these guys, they were trying to go all high-tech and image comics thing, and it was just really difficult to read. The art was really scratchy. And I was like, guys, that is just not the way to go. Well, you're not from Philly, and, that's the way we roll in Philly. I'm like, so you guys are from cream cheese or something?
Yeah, a lot of people are guilty of that, because there's a contingency of people out there who believe that their vision, their prism, how they look at things is exactly the way the world either is or how it should be. And they refuse to look at the fact that, like a simple thing, there are accepted ways of doing business. Someone does a service, then they get paid. Somebody does this, then they get paid. Somebody, if you are contracting to do art, then you have to produce whoever's paying the bill's vision. instead of going, well, that's not how I see it. And you go, you don't want to thump them in the head with a book or anything, but sometimes it's like, well, wait a minute, I'm paying you a service. So it is tough. It is tough getting all of those things to align in the skies. Now, do you do any work for anybody else, or are you just right now doing work for yourself, Al?
Well, since I'm, the boss of HOBB Comics, I have to do it all. I have to do the budgeting.
No, but I'm saying,
I'm the janitor.
No. But I mean, have you done, when you, okay, let me ask you this. When you started doing your artwork and your scripts and things like that, did you ever do work for somebody else? Or have you just been lucky enough to be able to do your own stuff?
I've been lucky enough to do my own stuff.
That's pretty cool. And then have you gotten criticism from people that you were able to step back, take a look at, and see why they said that, and turned it into a positive thing? Or, I mean, have you ever gotten any criticism at all?
Well, I welcome criticism. I mean, I want to know. I mean, I'm the first person to say, hey, what did you think of that? And, normally, and what gives me the big head is like my ex-wife said, yeah, you just want to get a big head. And I'm like, it gives me the big head because, Al, your stuff is good. I tell you, sure, I mean, is there something that rubs you the wrong way? I mean, don't spare my feelings, because I don't care about what you think. I just want to get I want to gauge it, I mean, you always want to know what the average person thinks because of that. One guy always said, before I corrected my coloring, he said, Al, your work needs to be like a meal. I was like, oh, okay, I've heard that before because I'm a cook, So it has to be appetizing. You don't want that reader to cringe. You want him to flow into your story, flow into the pictures. You want the panels, lined up properly. You don't want them all over the place like these guys in Philly did. They had a panel here, a panel there. You didn't know if you were going left to right or right to left or catty corner.
Right.
And it was just trash. And just use the standard stuff, go left to right. If there's something, that's going to go crazy, I can understand that boom panel or, that stray panel. But make it appetizing, make it pleasing, make it to the point where, hey, I want to know more about what's going on this page and what's going on in this book. And and I'm quick to ask people, hey, what do you think of my stuff? Is it crap? What is there a page that you didn't like? And normally when they say, I don't like this, and I'll know where it's coming from because they're a bastard,
Right.
No.
Okay. Yeah. But I think the takeaway here is that you do seek out critique from other people, and you do listen to their opinions because that does matter to you. That's important to you in terms of making you better.
Yeah. I mean, if you're sitting here, if I'm creating comics and I'm thinking, wow, I'm really cool and I'm really, cranking it out and I'm doing a great job, and I haven't, asked anybody or went through, any kind of process of, trying to figure out, am I any good? I mean, I'm just hurting myself. I'm just wasting my money, And I don't know, I did post this a couple of years ago, but CBR, I don't know if you know them, the Comic Book Resource.
No, I don't know them, but go ahead, yeah.
They are the, people, they know comic books. That's their job. I'm posting this on the thing. They reviewed one of my comic books for the African American comic book review. It's for all the African American guys. They submit their work and they look at it and they choose the best one. Where they chose mine, and here's the link here. I posted it there, and they said they loved it. I mean, these are guys who actually they review Marvel, DC, and everybody else. They gave me an outstanding review, and I was like, hey, maybe I'm on to something.
That's pretty cool. That's very cool. And see, it's the incremental instances like that kind of get your name out there. I mean, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to do it a different way. I'm going to put a big full-page ad in the New York Times book section. It's expensive, but I mean, you have to figure out a way to elevate you above the noise level. because we face two different hurdles, and I think you have the better advantage. One is finding people who are still reading, who are still interested. And fortunately, comic books are like candy to kids. If a comic book feeds a kid's creativity, he's going to look for them time and time and time again. So that's pretty cool that you're like that. For me, I've got a declining readership of novels out there. There fewer and fewer people are reading, and I'm thinking, well, that was pretty damn stupid to decide to become an author in the year 2001. Well, I'm just saying,
It's the dumbing down of America. They had a story on that on television. I mean, Americans are getting to the point where they don't want to read. And I'm a reader. I used to read Stephen King. I think I pretty much read all of his early books. I read Tolkien and all of these things. I love to read. War and Peace and Pip. And I was like, but then you get to the point where you don't have the time to read, and you buy the book, and it sits on the shelf forever. So I just stopped buying. I think I stopped with it. I bought the book. I never got a chance to read it. It just sat there, and I eventually gave it to Salvation Army. But comic books is something everybody will pick up, and they'll scan through, and if they like what they see, it's all eye candy. And if they like what they see, they'll stop just to read the story, and then you got them,
Right. We're coming down to about 9 minutes left. What do you think is the most important thing that you've learned so far about publishing your comics?
One of the most important things is focus on what they used to say in the old days, dot every T or dot every I and cross every T. That thing right there, that keeps running across my mind, because if you're the creator, editor, and writer, everything, it's all on you. I mean, if a horrible comic book comes out there, it's on Al. You have nobody else to blame. You say, well, my colorist did this and my artist did that, and I didn't want him to. You can't put the blame on anybody. So everything is just so tedious that I got some for my artist today, and it was a rough draft of the new page. And I mean, I had to look at it, 20 times, because you always miss something. And he's moving from the rough draft stage to the final stage, thinking it now. So he'll give it back to me probably tomorrow or something like that, or next week or something. But you don't want them to say, "Oh, I didn't see that the first time." Could you go back because once they inked it, that they're pretty much done. He's doing it old-fashioned. He's not doing it on a computer. So. Most artists, the new artists, they use a Wacom tablet. So if you want to go back, they just hit backspace, and it just starts erasing things, and they can change. But if you do it the old-fashioned way, it's written in stone. So that's one of the things. Just be meticulous, and just make sure everything is done. And in the end, you'll feel so much better, because you say, "Man, this is a great work of art."
And have you thought of maybe doing, taking, here's what you did. You took your novels and you converted them to comics. Have you thought about maybe going backwards and maybe putting together graphic novels of some of your work to kind of concentrate them into...
I wouldn't do a graphic novel because they are so expensive. I mean, you were thinking now, 24-page comic book, and I actually did this at the beginning, and it cost me almost $5,000. I was like, I'm gonna do this great graphic novel. It's gonna be Tori, and it's gonna be that story, and now granted, the story Tori comes from, like, I don't know, the late '80s. I wrote it back then, and I'm still working on it. But I was gonna do it, and I was gonna get the best artist. This artist worked for Marvel, and he was charging, I think, like $200 a page. Wow. So, I mean, and it was 25 pages, and he did the full, I mean, it cost me so much money, and I was like, dude, I can't do this again. I'm going to just have to get somebody who's generally good and have them do it, and who's semi-professional, and that's the thing you got to worry about. They're semi-professional, have them do it. But, I mean, yeah, you do those graphic novels, man, up front, the cost is just huge. And
well, what if money was no object? I mean, artistically, does the idea appeal to you? Even though it's expensive, but yeah. So
if money was no object, I would definitely do it. I mean, because it would look great and it would be a great story. But I mean, I've already got the novel half done. I might as well just go ahead and do it in a novel and see how far it goes from there.
Yeah. And then what for you? You've been doing this long enough. You've got your business model down. You've got your procedures down and stuff like that. What do you find to be the worst part of what you're doing, of having to do what you do?
Dealing with artists. I mean, that's pretty much the worst part of it because, I mean, they're artists. They're creatives. I have this one artist that, I've been doing the store with him for a long time. But he wants to do it. He loves the story, and this is why I like my artist. My first artist is Alex. This is why I love him because he does what he's told, and he's like, "Great, Al, I'll take care of it. I got the storyboard. I got the script." But you'll get artists that love your story. They say, "Al, this is good and good. I like this. I really like this," and they'll start getting into the story, and they say, "Al, instead of doing this, why don't you do that?" I'm like, okay. You're the artist. You're not the creator. You're not the writer, and their feelings are hurt. They're like, hey, I've been working on this thing for a year now. I think you should want to listen to me and take my advice. So you have to be careful. I mean, dealing with artists and creatives is not easy. And you have to be tactful. You have to make sure that they get paid on time and that they're happy. And you don't want to make anybody happy.
Yes. Yeah, no, but so the human factor is the one that's the biggest pain in the butt for you in terms of trying to get your stuff done, dealing with the other people, dealing with their professionalism or lack thereof or all of that, right?
Yes, yes. Everything else is the walk in the park.
Yeah, yeah. Right now, and I know it's kind of a dodgy situation, or it's certainly not normal. It's not optimal for you. About how many hours a day do you think you work right now?
Oh, since I'm old and decrepit, I wake up like in the middle of the night. How old people, they wake up like at 4 a.m. and they're like, oh, what's going on? And your body won't let you go to sleep, and then you stay awake for the entire day, and then 5:30 rolls around and you can barely stand. It's like, wait a minute, what's going on? Like somebody turned off a switch. And other times than that, I'm able to stay up like 2 days straight. You'll wake up at 4 a.m., you'll stay awake that entire day, you'll go into the next day writing and creating, and you're like, wow, I've been up for like a whole, almost a 48-hour period. When's the sleep going to kick in? And then all of a sudden you get tired and you like, why is Grandpa drooling, So I'm on that cycle now. I mean, it's just, every time I'm awake, I'm creating or going to the gym.
Right. It's not a bad life, dude.
It's not. I mean, I didn't think a black man could be this happy. I mean, I constantly say that to my friends here, who are school friends, old school friends, and they're still working. They're my age, and they're like, Al, I wish I had done like you did, man, went into the military. They stayed here. And I was like, man, I thought me being the idiot that I am, I thought I'd be working until the day I die. Because, as you know, I got 5 kids. I had 2 marriages, 2 ex-wives. I've paid a ton of child support. And the worst thing, I got this one comic, and I always say the worst thing than child support is back child support. You miss a payment, not only do, at the end of that month, not only do you have to pay your normal child support, you have to pay what you didn't pay last month. And
that's true.
If that builds up, I don't care who you are, white or black, you're never going to catch up, ever.
Well, it is paying for it is for your kids. So, I mean, you can't really complain too badly, but...
No, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that...
it is what it is.
It is what it is. When I had to pay child support for my kids, I had just gotten out of the Army and I had went work for Walmart. Well, Walmart doesn't pay you that much money, and I mean,
no, it really doesn't.
And the child support laws were strict. And here in Alabama, of all places, and they probably do it other places, but I like to harp on Alabama because it's my home state. They put you in jail if you miss a payment. Now, if you get put in jail, you're definitely not going to be at work Monday morning.
Yeah, and so, I never understood that logic. That they would lock you up and keep you from doing the thing that you needed to do.
Exactly.
We're just about out of time now. Let me say this. This has been a great. The time we spent together has been great. I think that you're going to be very successful. I look at your work, and it is as good as anything that I've ever seen. So that's
thank you.
That's good. And then obviously I wish you great success in the future. This has been an easy show for me to
like
do.
You and hanging around guys like you.
Oh
and
no,
Rashida. I mean, you guys, spark my imagination. I mean, every time I see you, I'm like, oh, William and his books, And I'm from the housing project, so jealousy is a powerful thing for me. It motivates me. And when I see somebody
you should not be jealous about anything I do. Go ahead.
When I see somebody who has done something that I can actually do, it's like my grandmother used to tell me. She says, hey, keep your eyes open and keep your mouth closed and your eyes open and your ears open. Make sure you can match these people, see what they're doing, and then, try to, get to their level. And I'm not at your level and Rashida's level because she's a good writer and you're pumping out books left and right.
Well, I have a sickness. It's like I don't want to die poor. Plus, for me, a lot of my writing is venting. Well, it's social justice venting. So
that's good.
It's keeping me from going out on the street and shooting people. So I look at it as therapeutic. But Al, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate you spending this time with me. Jarvis is, I don't know if he's here or not. I don't think it says he's logged in the chat.
I see him.
But he's not dialed in, so I guess I'll have to close the show. But what I want to say is I want to thank everybody who does stop in, listen to the show live. It's always fun to see what kind of comments people have and the questions that they have too, for whatever creative we have on, and they're the people who really help make this happen. I want to thank everybody who does show up. I want to thank all the people who check this out as a podcast because they could not stop in. As a reminder, this show goes live around 9 p.m. Eastern time every Friday, and we try to bring you the best in the creatives from the Black science fiction world, science fiction, horror, and fantasy worlds. Stay tuned for BSFS over the next few months. We're going to have more information about the BSFS movie Earth Squadron. They work on that every week. They have meetings every Sunday. Some pretty cool things out on that. Jarvis has done a new logo for BSFS. Keep an eye out for that. And he's got that 3D printer. I'm hoping he starts printing out stuff for sale that's related to the site, which would be like the logo and maybe some action figures from the movie, things like that. Those would be really cool to get. On my front, I don't have a lot going on. I just finished my third book. I'm uploading all the files, so maybe I'll be closing out the trilogy in the next 4 or 5 weeks. I should have the third book done, and that's like 750,000 words.
When you say that just digs at me. I mean, I'm that competitive. I'm like, man, I got 4 novels that I haven't completed, and this guy's just cranking them out.
Yeah, but it's a sickness, man. Don't. I will confess to everybody, I'm not the most well-adjusted individual out there. So don't look at me as some kind of yardstick. And so I will say this: I have a sense of accomplishment for having done a trilogy, because even as I was writing the first book, I didn't think I would get it done.
That's an awesome accomplishment.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I guess so. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank everybody for their support, and keep visiting the site. Keep uploading your work. Keep letting people know what you all are doing, those of you listening. And Al, you always do anyway. It's good seeing you when you drop in. I want to thank everybody for checking out the show, and I'm going to wish everybody a good weekend, and I'm going to stop the recording after you say goodbye, Al.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, man. Take care.
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 Good night.
All right, man. Take care.